Welcome to Creative Block. We're your host, V.
And Sean, we interview people in creative industries about their life, work, and hobbies while we doodle jam.
We ask people on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube and Patreon and Discord. And you can even send us questions by email if they had specific topics they wanted us to discuss, as well as some drawing prompts.
Today, we have with us Grace Rolek.
Hi!
Yay! Welcome.
Yay, I'm so happy to be here.
That's so fun. It's so exciting because, for everybody listening to Creative Block, if this is your first episode, you don't know that Grace is our very first voice actress on the show. We met through email. Through Jeff's podcast, Jeff Luz.
Yes. So my mom sent me the ask for questions for Jeff Lou and was like, you should ask a question. And I was like, okay. But it was fun to come up with one. And it sparked curiosity. I went and found a podcast episode to listen to, which I found Etienne Guignard's, probably butchered the pronunciation there, Etienne's episode, and listened to that one because he worked on Steven Universe and I know him, so it was fun to listen to that one.
Etienne is also French, by the way, if y'all want to listen to some visa shenanigans. But I think it's really, really cool because we've had people ask us what it's like to do voices for cartoons. So now we can ask you.
Yeah, I can answer that.
Yeah. When did you start voice acting, all that? How is kind of like?
Yeah. So I have kind of a weird origin story of sorts. I grew up in LA, so I kind of fell into it, which is a really unsatisfactory answer when people ask me how I got into acting, because I really, it's hard for me to give advice. I'm like, well, when I was 4, my parents asked me, would you want to be an actor? And I was a really hammy kid. Like, if you put me in front of a group of people, I was just singing and dancing and doing weird voices and whatever. So I guess at some point along the line, my memory of this is all very fuzzy, but they found me an agent. They found me people that would help me get auditions, and I ended up really enjoying it. And weirdly enough, voiceover is kind of what stuck. I did commercials as a kid. I had like one line in an episode of the George Lopez show when I was a kid. But generally speaking, I just really liked voiceover. I think part of it was that I didn't have to memorize lines. But yeah, I've actually, since I signed with my voiceover agent, I think I signed with her when I was either 5 or 6. I've actually still been with the same agent since I was a kid, which is kind of crazy because I'm technically in the youth division, even though I'm 25.
Are all the other clients babies? And you're like, I am the only one.
There are a lot of babies. Before the pandemic, they used to have a recording studio that clients could use to go audition in, and it was always really funny to see the variation. I mean, they have a adult division as well, but so it wasn't just kids, but it would be funny as adult to see other kids auditioning, and I was like, I used to be you.
I used to be you. That's really funny. I feel like it's funny because I wonder kind of what it's like starting so young. Do you feel like you ever had to kind of keep honing in your craft, or were you just kind of like, did you take acting classes or improv? What's your...
So I don't know. I kind of feel like my acting journey is very like split between being like a little kid and kind of being an adult, in the sense that I took a break from on-camera acting when I was in middle school, I would say, and I was just focusing on voiceover because that was around the time when I realized I didn't know if I wanted to keep doing it, but I still liked it. I preferred voiceover at that point because honestly, the hours are way better. I mean, you can finish an entire episode in like a couple of hours, but if you were doing a live action show, that could be a whole week going
Wow.
in to being in on different locations. And so I preferred voiceover very strongly at that point. And around that time, I had been homeschooled as a kid, so I wanted to go to high school, real high school, be a normal kid. And so that was kind of the deal. I would still do voice acting, and I went to a normal high school. And sometimes my mom would pull me out early to go to auditions.
That is so cool though. I feel like that's so interesting that you got both kind of experience of like the like, because I feel like a lot of actors and actresses get that like a homeschool experience where they're always on set and like going left and right, and that you were able to go to high school. How is it adapting to going to like like being a regular kid?
Regular kid, yeah. No, it was funny. I mean, so I did go to a performing arts high school in LA. So the idea of being an actor or having to leave class early to go to auditions was not considered very weird. It was funny though. I remember really distinctly my first day of freshman year seeing like two girls singing in the hallway and feeling like I just was in or not an episode of just I was like watching High School Musical or something. I was like, I thought real high school's people didn't burst into song.
Yeah, aren't you supposed to get made fun of when you do that?
Yeah, right. I'm like, where are all the jocks? It's like we don't have sports here. We're in a office building in Van Nuys. It was a very strange charter school, which worked for me. I think I would have been overwhelmed if I had just gone to
Yeah.
like a massive public high school.
No. Do you feel like you dodged a bullet a little bit, not being on camera? Because I personally know some child actors who were in front of the camera, and I think it led to a lot of problems with some of them.
To be entirely honest, yeah, 100%. And I kind of was aware of that. I mean, when I decided that I didn't want to do on camera acting, it was around the time that I was starting to go through like an emo phase. And I was starting to get auditions for like Disney Channel shows. And
Oh yeah.
I was having like baby's first existential crisis of like, I don't know if this is the kind of person I want to be seen as. It's all very overwhelming. I'm starting to get pimples. I would rather hide. But I still had that part of me that loved performing, and I had just been super lucky to have been able to work in voiceover before I started experiencing those feelings. So I could just continue doing that and step out from the other side. But yes, I also knew other child actors that I I don't think that mental health wise being the child actor train wreck trope is a trope for a reason, unfortunately. I think it's really sad, and I'm very grateful that I had honestly a very relatively positive experience being in the industry at a very young age.
Yeah, that's really cool because I don't know. I read the Jeanette McCurdy book and I was like, ooh, whoa, that's
I've been wanting to read that, but I think there's a little part of me that's like, I need to be ready.
yeah.
Oh,
It's
no.
it's a tough one.
Yeah.
She's really good at kind of like balancing it with like self-awareness and like some very, very dry kind of humor, but it's kind of like, oh boy, yeah, buckle
Yeah,
up.
I mean,
Yeah.
when you go through circumstances in your life like that, I think that the dry humor armor is a necessity.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Oh wow. That's cool that you were yeah, that the voiceover path like opened up to you on like cuz then I feel like cuz then that granted you a little bit of anonymity, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, no, it was great. I mean, I definitely like I don't know, it's funny now because it feels almost kind of dated at this point, but I'm like, I had a website. Like I think my parents helped me set up an email list. So like I remember as a kid there would be like people could join my like fan letter site email thing, and they would get like email updates, and it would say like Grace booked an episode of Handy Manny, like
Oh
um
wow.
older Playhouse Disney show for those who don't know of it.
Dude, but like that's so smart though. Okay, like I'm just gonna plug the little like the hustle, the artist hustle. But it's like I feel like now like us like visual artists we're like trying to figure out like what's the best social media to be on to like kind of build our brand and like get a fan base and da da da. And I feel like now we're just back to like email lists.
Shout out to email. Yeah,
Yeah,
shout out to
honestly.
email. It hasn't updated.
Yeah.
I
It'll
mean,
just always be the
yeah.
same.
I mean, it's funny now at this point too. I mean, I try not to be too sucked into social media.
Sure.
I definitely used to be way more sucked in. I think that I'm more of a lurker. I wish I had a poster's heart, but honestly, I just like watching what other people have to say. And now that Twitter is a
Yep.
shit show, for
Mhm.
lack of a better turn of phrase, I started like subscribing to people's Substacks, which was really fun. Because sometimes, you know, you use social media to like hear interesting things that people have to say. And it's also been better for my attention span to not be reading just like little paragraphs at a
Yeah.
time.
Little paragraphs is so true.
Well, you were talking about anonymity. I'm curious about like when you go to either get a job or audition for a job. How often is that in person versus sort of sending a tape or a demo reel or
Well, it's definitely changed a lot over the years. When I was a kid, at least, I mean, with on camera, when I was a kid, everything was in person. Now, I mean, even before the pandemic, there was a huge shift into self tapes. But with voiceover, pretty much since the beginning, it's been you record it on your own, you send it in. And before the pandemic, I used to be able to go into a recording studio at my agency, and they would have like a director in the booth to give feedback. And then you would do a couple of takes and you'd send it in. But it was still like you were kind of insulated from having to like perform in front of a casting director or producers who are just kind of staring at you.
mm-hmm.
But that isn't to say that in-person voiceover auditions don't ever happen. I have gone in studio a couple of times. I would say, I think I would say Disney and Nickelodeon I've done like once you hit the like callback stage, I think
Mm-hmm.
they will bring you in. And I
They
think
like to
that's
meet you and
yeah, they want to see how directable you are, I think is the idea. They want to see like can you take direction and just like stick and roll and take what you were doing in a completely different direction.
sure.
That's really interesting. What's that can you describe that process a little bit for us? Like what or like maybe a question could be like what's an interesting change of direction you've had during a take?
Yeah, so on the just going in and doing it, usually, you know, if it's on a studio lot, you'll have to drive onto the parking lot, show your ID because they'll put you in like the guest list for the day. And then you go sit in the lobby, and then someone eventually calls your name and brings you in. And I've had to go into a booth before, like a normal recording booth, and then other times they'll just like have you just like reading the paper in front of them, and it'll be just like them hearing you in the room. And so then, you know, usually they'll just say like, okay, read the lines, and you perform it however you would choose to. And then afterwards say that what's a good example? I mean, sometimes it'll just be like, I don't think that the character would want to show their vulnerability in this line. Like, try not to play it so openly, maybe be a little bit more guarded. So, stuff like that, per se. Or sometimes it'll just be like, turn the dial up to 10, go crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, be as wild, just go full cartoony, like, no constraints of reality here.
What's your favorite kind of stuff to act? Do you like being kind of like crazy and cartoony, or do you like kind of doing a little bit more like realistic, like fine tuned?
I it's interesting. I think that I am gravitating more towards more like of the grounded realistic side of things. Not to say I like a blend of the two. I mean, I think that's what I loved about playing Connie on Steven Universe, is that, you did have like genuine emotion and like real, maybe not real life circumstances, because there's no crystal gems in the real world, but not going to an intergalactic universe, but just like conveying real depth of emotion. I think that I really enjoyed, and that was something that I had not previously had the chance to do in my voiceover career. And I will say, so the reason I kind of say I divide my acting experiences into two distinct chapters. After working on Steven Universe for a little while, that was actually the thing that made me go, okay, you know what? I'm committing. I'm an actor. Like because I kind of had one foot in, one foot out through my teenage years. And it wasn't until I would say probably around when I was like 18 or 19 that I decided I'm going back.
Oh,
Also, how long did you take a break for? It sounds like you took a little bit of a break.
Yeah. Well, I just from on
on screen.
camera.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
just from
yeah.
just from
Okay.
on-screen acting. But I do, and it's kind of, I don't know. It's weird. I'm so grateful for the fact that I booked Steven Universe when I did. I was 15 when I booked the show.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I had been on my on-camera hiatus for about 3 or 4 years at that point. And I still was like, when I got the audition, I had loved Adventure Time and Rebecca Sugar's work on Adventure Time. So I was really excited about the project and really put my all into auditioning for it. But generally speaking, my attitude towards auditions was like, okay, I have to go to this before I can start my homework. Like,
Oh,
I was
right. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
I really, the average audition I was getting, I was not like putting my all into. Because I was like 14,
Yeah.
13, like I don't know. But I honestly, when I was a kid, and I've still, even like when I meet child actors as an adult, I've met some that were like incredibly driven the entire time and like begged their parents to move to LA so they could follow their dreams. But
Oh, wow.
I was really like, I like performing. Okay, yeah, let's do this. Sure. So, I don't know. I definitely, the imposter syndrome was definitely real when the success of Steven Universe started to come about.
Was that the first time that you had? I mean, I know that you had like a fan email, kind of thing, but was that the first time that you had like seen like people like did people start contacting you all the time, like fans, like things like that?
Yeah, so I think it would have been right after the end of season 1 of Steven Universe aired. I think I was in my freshman year of college, I think, at that point. And I had made the decision at that point. My Instagram and my Twitter were private, and I only had friends on there. And I made the decision. I was like, all right, let's open the floodgates.
Oh
Oh,
no.
no.
Okay,
Uh-oh.
all right, all right.
And so that was like the kind of first foray into experiencing that end of things, which, is not, it's, I have a complicated relationship with the visibility of social media and whatnot, but also I think ultimately I enjoy connecting with fans. And I mean, I've had so many positive experiences of people telling me how like Steven Universe changed their life. So it's, you take the good with the bad.
Yeah, Steven
Hmm.
Universe was just a really tough fandom. It's known in the animation industry that it was very it's a tricky fandom because it's both like it brought a lot of good.
It
Yeah.
seemed like one of those fandoms that it was one of the first ones where like now the artists were being approached too, and the storyboard artists.
Yes.
i- If if the storyboard artists did something that the fans perceived wrong on an episode, they might be blamed, or like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
the
yeah.
fans would sort of hold everyone to
Yeah.
some sort of spotlight, which
Mm-hmm.
was different
Yeah.
for artists. We're like always behind, like.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, like the board artists got a lot of attention. I think it was one
Hmm.
of these shows where because the board artists because it was board driven, like there was a little bit of like a star status
Yeah.
for this role, which is very it's very rare, I think, in for
Hmm.
board artists to be stars like that in a way. But like you said, it was both like good and bad because like it kind of came like that. The attention was very extreme, I
That's
think.
so interesting. I mean, I think on some level I knew that, and obviously talking to the board artists on Steven Universe, but it's interesting to think about it like that because I do know that I mean, I have friends who studied animation in college and or wanted to, and it is it is interesting to see how there is a kind of level of niche celebrity to working
Yes.
on a
Yeah.
show of that
Yeah.
status.
I remember
That's
when
so
I was
true.
at Cartoon Network, I worked on the same floor as Steven Universe, so I worked on regular show.
Oh,
And
cool.
we had a floor meeting one day where there was an executive that talked to everybody about how when you work on a show and you talk publicly on Twitter about the show, journalists are able to take your word as insider information about the whole show.
Ooh.
And I think at the time, maybe a board artist or somebody had slightly confirmed that a character was gay on the show on Twitter or something like that. And they were just like, you have to, like, people, journalists can take your word as insider information from the show, and not only that, we air in some countries where that could endanger people's lives.
Mhm.
So you have to be careful about what you say as like an artist on the show too. And that was the first time that I was like, what? Like, people are listening to storyboard artists on Twitter about the show? Like, what?
It
No,
was
it's
yeah, yeah. It was the first time. I think Adventure Time regular I don't know if you guys at regular show really had that, but I know for sure Adventure Time and Steven Universe, that was the very first time there was such a spotlight on board artists. That was so crazy.
yeah. I mean, I remember, especially when Steven Universe was first airing, like seasons 1 and 2, I used to lurk on Tumblr a lot. And that, I don't know if that was the best choice for me to be doing at the time, but I was doing it a lot. And it was really crazy though, because I would see like people say like, oh, you can tell so and so boarded this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
and like comments like that, where it would be like, oh, why are like these faces all look like super funny because this person did it. And it was really interesting to me because I mean, I don't have a cartoon drawing background. My visual arts skills are less than stellar. But it was really interesting to see like how storyboard artists were making their mark on the show just as much as I mean, I know on Steven Universe the storyboard artists were also writing the episodes,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but just as much as the voice actors or the other lovely people that
N-
make cartoons.
You know what's funny? Dude, I'm bringing that up in every episode now. I feel like I'm bragging all the time. But I I have a short in development with Cartoon Network, and recently I was directing some of the actors for it, and they showed the boards, and I was kind of surprised that they showed the boards to the voice actors, and that the voice actors could like be inspired from the drawings. And then obviously I was like, like whatever take is the funniest take, we'll go with that because then I can go and edit drawings and stuff. But do you when you were voicing, were they showing you the boards to kind of
Yeah.
match?
Yeah, we would actually also before records, we would get usually a copy of the boards and the script the night before, or maybe like a day before. And it was always really fun to look at. And especially, honestly, the biggest thing I miss about working on Steven Universe was the group records.
Oh yeah.
I just loved being in the same room as the like Michaela and Dee Dee and Zach, and the best part I think was just like having everyone's energy feeding off of one another. And it would always be fun when you would see like a really good face on a board, or like a movement or an action that you could like see the character doing. It became easier to sort of imagine what to do with your voice. I mean, because it kind of functions in a similar-ish way. I mean, when you're reading a script for something live action, you have all of this stage direction that you're reading, and a lot of voiceover scripts, I mean, especially when you're auditioning for like video games, you just kind of, usually most of the time, you just have like a couple of lines, and then maybe it'll say angry to be read defensively, or like eagerly, and you'll just get like an adverb, and it's like, that's cool. I mean, that's like fine.
Funny.
But
Now, do you prefer direction like that, or completely open-ended and just giving you like the world to interpret it?
I will say probably like open-ended,
Okay.
having the world to, but also at the same time, there is flexibility within those like little adverbs. I think a lot of the time too. I mean, there's a reason why animation and also live action are such collaborative mediums, is because sometimes people, bring something to the words that you didn't have in mind before.
Sure.
And especially, I mean, I one really fun thing, there was an animated show that I was working on in college that I actually got recast from, which was a whole thing, but it was really amazing.
Recast means that like did they switch you out, or did they
Yeah,
you came
yeah.
in to take over someone?
No, so well, yes and yes. I came in to replace someone, and then I ended up being replaced.
Whoa.
Oh wow.
Well,
Yeah.
listen, we do like having stories told on here that like aren't necessarily all the wins that you've had.
Totally.
And so this
Yeah.
is like super interesting just to
Yeah.
know that this happens, and I'd love to
Yeah.
see like I'd love to hear a little bit about like how you reacted. Was that your first time that happened to you? Like how does
I
something like that make you feel? Like something things like
Oh
that.
yeah. So at that point, I was already working on Steven Universe, and it was like the title role of the show. So I'm not gonna lie, it stung.
Yeah.
But it was also like a kind of a weird situation where I'm not going to say what it was, but
Sure.
like I didn't love the writing of it. So it was kind of like this weird thing where it was like it felt like this really amazing win in my career, because it was like the lead. But at the same time, I was like, I don't know if I would personally watch this. So it wasn't like I felt like super amazing about it. And it was also geared at a slightly younger audience than Steven Universe, which I would say, I mean, is still like Steven Universe is directed towards what I would always tell people is like Steven Universe you can let your kids watch. I wouldn't describe it necessarily as like only being made for them.
You know what's interesting? Yeah, Steven Universe, I feel like is very YA, what they call, YA. And it's funny
Yeah.
because everyone right now is like, there's a market for YA, but what is this market? I like all the streamers, they're
Yeah.
like, they don't know what it is. And it's like, I don't know, Twilight, Steven Universe, like these are
Yeah.
big
Yeah,
YA
yeah, like shows that like adults and kids can watch,
Yeah.
but maybe there's not as much gratuitous, there's not like blood and
Yeah.
gore everywhere or as much cursing or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was like slightly younger. I feel like it was more one of those shows that is like, do you know where to find the whatever is like kind of tone? But it was super cool because when I was working on it, I got to work with some like really amazing voice actors in the group records, like Steve Bloom and Jess Harnell, and even Jessica DeChico was also a part of it, and it was really fun to work on. I actually did. So the reason that my agent told me that I got recast was that my voice sounded too similar to another voice actor in the cast.
Oh, dang.
And
Yeah.
so it wasn't it wasn't like people could get confused as to like who was speaking. And the funny thing is though that I think both of us got recast.
Oh,
Oh,
dude,
oh.
it's tough because God, this is the hardest thing. I feel like when I was casting my actresses for my short, I wanted one to be like more like a lower type of pitch and another one a higher type of pitch. And then both of the ones that I really loved a lot, I was like, oh, they're both like a little lower pitch. So I was crossing my fingers. I was like, please, I hope that, and it's so crazy because you don't think about it. Like before ever casting, I never thought that you had to think about that kind of stuff. It's so crazy.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I mean, that is one thing. I mean, obviously, like, I didn't like get the news and go, okay, cool.
Yeah.
But
Interestingly enough, I've worked on a show where the main characters are two twins and their voices are exactly the same.
Whoa.
oh, interesting.
And when we would listen to the radio plays, I'm like, I have no clue who's talking right now. Like, because they had different shirts and different hats, but the characters also looked very similar.
Oh.
And so we always like when the storyboard artists had to board them, we would have to like write the little letter of their first name on their shirt just to make sure that like everyone knew what which one that was. And we always had to look at the scripts very closely, but that's like a unique experience to yeah. But
No, that's so funny though. That's so funny though. I mean, I have seen auditions come through where they're like, these are three sisters and they should all sound the same, but also be different because they have different personalities, but it should be played by the same actor.
Do you love that? Do
Whoa.
you love that so much that you have to
I love
sound the
that
same
so
but different?
much. I actually had one of those fairly recently.
So what does that feel like? Does that feel like voice acting Nutty Professor? Like is that like
Kind
like
of.
the whole
I mean,
family all dressed in like
well, so
but you do it
it
with your
wasn't
voice?
the way I did it in the audition is that I would go through and read one character's lines all the way through, and then I would sort of reset
Yeah.
and do another character's lines all the way through. And they didn't want me to like cut it together. They wanted all three on like separate takes. So
Nice.
it wasn't like I had to be
Yeah.
like,
Mhm.
like
When you're approaching something like that, do you think like in your head are you thinking, all right, I'm going to keep this thing about their voice the same, but I need to change I need to change how fast I talk with this person and like the cadence, or like how do you think about
It
how to change
really
the voices enough?
depends. It really depends. And I mean, honestly, I do rely quite a bit on the character descriptions. And I mean that as like sort of a launching off point. Because if someone like I definitely sometimes will do an audition and then reread the character description and then go, oh, they wanted someone with a raspy voice. I need to redo this. Like, but I will say in that specific instance, I usually will look at like the sort of personality traits, and then if
Mhm.
they're all twins, I won't like try to differentiate by age. But there are times where they're like, so and so is the oldest of the group, and so then you're like, okay, I should try to sound a little older.
Sure. Like, what is that vocabulary or just enunciation? Like, how do you? Oh, yeah. So, how do you picture older as far as like when you modify your voice to be older?
It also really depends on who I'm auditioning for, not in terms of like the creator of the show, but kind of the network. I kind of keep
Mm.
network in mind a lot. Like a Disney 16 is not going to sound like a 16 for like a anime or like a Netflix thing, or like like I feel like Disney would be like, you still kind of pretty much sound like a kid. Like I know 16-year-olds that sound like my speaking voice, but I'm not going, if I'm reading for a Disney 16-year-old, I have to like have like a little bit more of a like
Yeah.
mom, like
A little bit acted, a little bit kind
yeah.
of like a bigger than life.
Yeah, which, I think it also depends because, some people, and there's another thing, it's like, we just want authentic voices. And then
Yeah,
you
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of read that and you're like, well, do you?
Well, so
Yeah.
you are totally allowed to say no, but I was wondering if would I be able to give you a line, and like would you be able to say that line as a 6-year-old, like a 13-year-old, and like an 18-year-old?
I'd give it a try. I mean, I will say I wish I was as good as other voice actors at like doing the like super itty bitty kid voices, but I will try.
If you hate it, we can totally cut it out. I'm just really interested.
No, no,
We've
no.
never had a voice actor on here
No,
before, and I'd love to pick your
Yeah.
brain, you know?
I'm game. I'm game.
So if we said like basically a line that's like that, oh no, the trash can's on fire, but you can
Mhm.
change
Mm-hmm.
the line in of in the way that you'd have the different ages be if you want to.
Okay. Cool. All right. Oh no, the trash can's on fire. All right. So like if we were doing like a little kid, you'd be like, oh no, the trash
That's so good.
Dude, that's so good. Hell yeah.
That's
can's
so
on
good.
fire. And then maybe okay, so this would be more of like young teen. I'm like, oh no, the trash can's on fire.
Nice. So you're
Um
adding like a little bit, a little
Yeah.
bit of grit, like a tiny bit of like the
Mm-hmm.
voice is changing a little bit.
yeah. And then okay, and then if it was like older teen to like young adult, it'd be like, oh no, the trash can's on fire.
That's
Nice.
awesome. Well, thank you so much for humoring me. That's awesome.
That is so
Yeah,
cool.
it's fun. I don't mind. I mean, hey, I am a voice actor. I do love to do this. It is always funny though. I mean, I definitely sometimes feel like it is a dinner party trick because I'll say
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I have a lot of I have a good amount of actor friends and I also have a good amount of non-actor friends. And it's always very funny. Like there was a point for the first or I guess at some for part of 2020 and 2021, I was living with two really good friends of mine, one of whom was in law school and the other one was like just started a job in like economics consulting. So they were like doing like very, very different stuff than me on the day to day. And I'd be like, hey guys, so like if you hear me screaming, just don't worry about it.
That's so funny. That's so true though. I feel like it's funny because like okay, I that was gonna lead into a question of mine. Like when I was writing the casting calls for my for the short, I was like, I was like for the actors, I was like, I want you guys to be really broad, to be really, really crazy. And like the people that really honed it in were people that were like screaming in their auditions. It wasn't like I didn't give them any screaming lines, but I was like, if you're gonna take any of these line and end up screaming somewhere, like yes. And and I wonder kind of like did you like what is a description that's like inspiring for you? So because for
Oh.
me that was the very first time I ever wrote descriptions for casting calls, and I was like, it's a little bit like Angie Tribeca, but if she was like 12 and like she's really intense and this and that, and it's like, does that help you when you have a comparison to a character, or do you feel like that's hindering you?
Sometimes. I mean, some people mean that in that, like, I've gotten ones where it's like, we literally want her to sound like this.
Mm.
Oh,
And there
interesting.
and there are also times when it's just like a vibe suggestion, you know?
Mm.
So it depends. I honestly really just the character art goes a really long way for
Oh,
me at least.
interesting.
I
Hmm.
love looking at character art and sometimes just like from like seeing like the pose they're doing or like, just getting a I keep saying the word vibe. Getting a vibe.
Yeah, yeah,
Um
yeah, 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 yeah.
on the verbal like written end of it though. I
Mm.
mean, I like personality stuff. I also think it's funny to like sort of see like an example of like what the character does. Like I don't know how to
Mm.
describe it without like trying to literally remember a character description. But like, if someone's like the type of girl who always raises her hand in class even if she doesn't
Mhm.
know the answer or like stuff like that where it's like
Mhm.
you're getting a sense of the personality and it's not just like young, excited,
Yeah.
like Yeah, like I love like or like hyper fast talking. Like when people like I'm like, okay. But then I feel like I'm not on the casting end of things, but I have to imagine like you must if you put hyper or fast talking on a casting call, it's got to create the most like harebrained audition.
So I just gotta
Yeah.
be as unhinged as I possibly can so they know I can go there. Yeah, like that.
Yeah, well, that's something that I mean, I remember I think I've heard this from multiple people, but I've had like voice acting coaches or like I've done workshops. And one thing that they say a lot, especially for animation, because I mean different types of voice acting kind of calls for different skill sets.
Mhm.
And I will say with animation, one thing that you hear a lot is like don't be afraid to just go for it because it's a lot easier to
Yes.
tell your voice actors to tone it down than
Yes.
to turn it all the way up. And it's like nice for like the people who are casting you to know that if they want you to go absolutely insane, you can do it.
Yeah, I super agree with that. That was something that was really interesting for me because I really like I was writing my packet stuff like, oh, it's like okay, I'm not gonna say too much NDA stuff, but I'm like very, very broad, very, very cartoony. Think the very cartoony shows and a bunch of list of shows, and I was kind of surprised that I had a lot of very kind of like tame editions that
Mm,
sounded like grounded, and I'm like, oh, but like I it's a loony, it's crazy, yeah, and
mm-hmm,
you know,
mm-hmm.
and what you say is like so true. It's like I would rather have someone go way crazy and then I'm like, oh, then I know I can pull them back and they can hit like every single note of crazy.
Yeah.
Rather than when someone is like tame throughout, I'm like, I don't know if they're gonna be able to like, hit that really weird, funny cadence that's gonna make a kind of like okay line really funny. Because sometimes, man, pilots are hard. Pilots are so
Yeah.
tough because you're like, here, let me do a bunch of exposition for you, and it's gotta be funny, but sorry, I gotta make it really clear to you. So it's
So here's what we're doing in this one.
yeah, and it's like, and then yeah, and the man, the voice actors can like really take it to another level by just like the delivery.
Yeah. And I admire there are so many voice actors that I really admire. And I do think that for me, I mean, it's funny because I will say, I feel like Connie on Steven Universe kind of operated as a straight man a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And it was good for me because I definitely think that that is one thing that I want to continue pushing myself as a voice actor to be like zanier and crazier because I will say I'm a pretty I mean, I don't know, I'm goofy, but like I'm quirky, but like I'm not like yeah, I it's definitely taken some more practice, especially transitioning from child voice actor into adult
Mm.
voice actor. Because child voice actor, it's like, oh my god, you can read. You're like you can read copy. Get in there.
That's so
Go to
good.
yeah, exactly. It's like you actually know how to pronounce your R's. Go work every day.
That's so funny. Oh my gosh. That's really interesting. You've produced a short, right? Did you write it as well?
Yeah, I did. I did. So I and also with the voice of Steven,
Woo!
he and I both starred in it, and that was really fun. I wanted to get into writing and directing around when I was like in my late teens, early 20s. I was really starting to fall in love with film as a medium, and it was a lot of fun. I definitely learned a lot
Mhm.
from doing it. It was actually it's kind of funny. I'll reveal this. I when I left, I went to college originally in San Francisco, and I kind of don't know. I mean, I loved the idea of San Francisco when I decided to go to college there, but it would have been so much easier for me to either stay in LA or go to New York, at least for work.
Oh, interesting. Even New York would have been easier?
Oh, definitely. I mean, because there's still so many studios there, and there's like a bit of an
That's right.
entertainment hub,
Yeah.
and there were people working on Steven Universe from New York.
Interesting. Wow.
And so with San Francisco, I had to like go back and forth to LA every time I was working.
Mm.
And I decided that I wanted to either just leave school or maybe go to film school.
Mm.
And my parents live in Santa Clarita, which is where Cal Arts is.
Mhm.
And I was like, maybe I could get into the film program at Cal Arts.
Mhm.
And spoiler, I did not get in, which is
Oh.
which is totally fine in hindsight. Like obviously it was disappointing, but it kind of makes sense because I really like there are people who are applying that had been working on their portfolios and working on their short films for a really long time, and I
Mm.
really just like as an actor decided I was like I think this would be a good move for me. And I honestly in hindsight I feel like it was really I don't know what the right word because it didn't come from a place of like cockiness really, but I was just kind of like oh yeah, sure, like let's give this a try.
Mhm.
And I think it was just kind of naive to be like, oh yeah, I'll just apply to one of the best like art schools in the country. Sure, yeah, why not? Because I was like, yeah, why wouldn't they want the voice of Connie from Steven Universe in their program? Oh God, but so
That makes sense though.
a-
We've all been there. We've all been there. We've all like, tried a thing, and been like,
You're
I
like, this is
totally
a
got
shoe in,
it.
and then it doesn't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But it ended up being great for me because what ended up happening is that in my sort of feeling spurned and like I don't know, I guess I'm just motivated by spite. After that, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make a short film on my own and it's gonna be great.
I love that. That's
So
awesome.
I wrote a little short film called Mailboxes that I sort of wrote about feeling like I didn't know what the fuck I was doing as a 20 something. I was like, oh my God, everything is insane. The world is going crazy. This was probably like 2016, 2017 when I was like in this mental place.
Mm.
And I remember I was sitting next to Zach, the voice of Steven, on a flight back from a convention. And I was like, so I wrote this short film. Would you like want to read it? Maybe be in it with me? And that was that. And I honestly I paid for it with my own money, but my own money was very little money. and I
Mhm.
just got and I just got my friends to be the crew. I had my tall friends be like doing
The perch. Right.
I'm doing a motion where you're holding a boom mic operator.
That's what it is. Yeah.
That's why we keep those tall friends around, man.
Yeah,
I keep
exactly.
boom mic, cookie jar, top shelf,
Oh yeah.
trimming my hedges, and
And it was a great experience. I mean, as with, I think, any creative person knows the feeling of being so happy to be done with something you've created, only to watch it back, like, even just like as little as like a month later, a week later, and being like, oh my God, why did I do that? It's so bad.
That's how you learn though. You got to do a ton. It's funny because it's so funny because I went through both extremes, which the first extreme was like the very first time I finished the board, I was like, this is so awful. It sucks. It's really, really bad. I can't look at it. I have to send it to my supervisor. So I never look at it ever again. And then a month later, I look at it. I'm like, it's not so bad. It's actually kind of okay. And then now I'm at a point in my career where I'm like, I'm so good. I can just do this. And then I look at it again a couple months later. I'm like, I'm full of shit.
Yeah.
it's humbling. But the thing
Yes.
is, half the time, like you can't. There's only a limit to the amount that you can just like study and pre-prepare. Like there's no replacing just like messing up over and over and over
You
again
you
and learning from it.
Yeah.
you do what you have to learn. You have to learn by doing. It's I mean, like book knowledge or just like
Yeah.
reading how to do it. You gotta like practice stuff.
So
And
so so
Yeah.
how is trying something new like that for you? Because I mean, you had been acting since you were a kid, and you had gotten roles, and it's probably something that by this point seems a little second nature to you. You've been doing it for so long, but now you're putting yourself out there at a new thing and being vulnerable to like, oh,
Mhm.
people saw this and it's not the best thing I've ever made. It's my first thing, whatever. How did that feel? Like, what was that process like for you?
oh, super, super nerve-wracking. I remember when I put it on YouTube, I think we put it on YouTube in 2019. I remember I remember my therapist saying, "Don't read the comments." And I remember being like, "I will.
I'm gonna go home and read them.
I'm gonna do it. You can't stop me."
Oh no.
But it was actually it was really, I think a lot of people received it really well,
Oh,
and
nice.
it was cool. I mean, I definitely like, obviously, like there are some technical issues, there are some continuity errors, and also just like on the writing. I think,
Mm.
oh my God. I mean, I think in like the first like 2 minutes of it, I'm like swearing nonstop. And I'm like, did you really? Like, I was like, I'm not just a child actor. Like,
That's so
Trying to
funny
prove
because
yourself.
I feel like this is such a like a very like an experience that a lot of actors kind of like go through. I feel like and even it's funny because even writers that I talked to that were like, I'm so tired of writing on kids shows. I just want to write fuck and goddamn and
And then they overcompensate. Yeah,
yeah.
I've yeah, I've a friend who is a child actor, and he's one of those guys that looks very young even though he's in his
Mm-hmm.
30s, and he
Mm-hmm.
he could still be getting cast in high school. And he at some point he put his foot down and he was like, I never want to be in something with a locker again. Like it just
oh
like since he was 5, he's just been in high school or elementary school, and he's
Oh
like, I
yeah.
can't do it anymore.
That's so funny. No, yeah, that is really a thing with like the overcompensating, and I definitely was guilty of it. I'm like overall still like fairly proud of the work I did, but I feel like there was one thing that like I wish someone would have been like, "Okay, like we get it. Like you're trying to like." I think I was just like, "Oh, like this is how real people talk." And it's like, "Yes."
but how old were you when you wrote it though? Like,
Oh, like 20,
yeah,
21.
I
Yeah.
feel like I think we have to give ourselves a little bit of grace because like 2021, it's like that moment where
In
we're
the moment you don't feel like you're still a baby, but you're still a baby.
yes.
It reminds me of like I started cursing really late in life. And I remember like being around my friends and they would all curse and they would try to get me to curse. And so one day I was like, all right, I'm gonna curse. And this was dude, this was like 7th grade, 8th grade. Like everyone was cursing for so much longer than me. And I was just like
That's a
this like
fine
little
time.
nice I was this little nice boy who I was kind of sheltered. And so I remember like they were talking about like, oh my God, and then he like he stepped in dog shit. And then I like looked both ways and I said, he stepped in dog shit. Like and I always put the emphasis on the wrong, like I put too much emphasis
Yeah.
on like I would be like, what the fuck are you doing? Like I would I would like emphasize it wrong. Like I
Oh,
didn't
that's
know how to
so funny.
curse.
No, I mean that's kind of I feel that. I remember one time in I don't remember exactly what grade it was. It was still when I was homeschooled. So maybe 6th grade, 7th grade, maybe. I remember being home alone and just kind of being in my room and being like, fuck, fuck,
You
fuck.
practice, yes,
Like just like
dude.
I was like, how do I make this sound normal coming out of my mouth? Like how do I sound like a professional, like a sailor mouth person?
Did you ever practice how you were gonna do the middle finger? Because there's like kind of multiple ways
I
to do
actually
it.
I have a great story about that. Actually. Um um so I don't come from a like particularly religious family or anything, but like the people next door were fairly religious growing up, and I remember my mom was like, gonna have you do like a private Bible study lesson with the girl next door. You're probably wondering how this connects, but we're gonna get there. So at some point, she's like only a few years older than me, and I was a kid, so she must have been like 11 or 12. And I remember for some reason we got into it, and she just told me that the middle finger was bad. And like the middle finger was like of the devil or something. I don't really remember. But she didn't like demonstrate to me how to give someone the middle finger. She just kind
this
of
rules.
explained it to me as a concept. And so flashing forward to the next time I get into a fight with my parents and I'm, like really angry because they're not letting me do something I wanted to do or whatever it was. I don't remember now. I get my hand in position, and what I do is I basically point like this with my
Hold on,
middle
I'm gonna
finger.
draw it for the audience.
Yeah.
I'm gonna draw what
I'll try to verbally explain, but I'm basically like, when you're just like pointing at something with your index finger, I'm basically doing that with my middle finger.
That's
like
so
just like
funny.
shoving forward with it and being like, man, I'm so mad at you.
That's so funny. Dude, I have such a similar story to that about how I found out about the middle finger. It's a little bit, it's different enough, but it's very similar in the way that we learned about how the middle finger is bad. So my older sister was babysitting us, me and my younger sister, and we were just kind of playing a game where it's like somebody asks a question and you have to raise your hand and then you can answer the question or whatever. And I was like, well, like having our hands up is just boring. What if we did a different kind of signal? And then I was like, pointing my index finger. That's boring. You know what? I'm just gonna point my middle finger. So it would be like this. And my older sister was like, no, you can't do that. That's a bad word. And I was like, it's not a bad word.
How is a finger a word?
Yes,
you're dumb.
Exactly. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. And she was really mad. She was like, no, you can't do it. It's a bad word. And she wouldn't explain. And then I went everywhere and showed everyone. I was like, is this a bad word?
Oh my God.
Just like, anyway, so similar but different.
That's so
awesome.
funny. That's so funny. I love that because there's so many things that like, God, I used to be like a fucking cop when my mom would say damn as a child. Like I don't, and like in high, I'm like, that is like what the mild, like they will let you say that on like, I don't know, not like kid shows probably, but like, it's not.
Wait.
Yeah.
I feel like, yeah, damn.
Did they say damn on PG-13?
No, because
Is that PG-14?
No, yeah, maybe PG-13. It's funny because I had that conversation recently where I was like, you can't, like, even oh my gosh is like a little older than
because it's implying God. Like it's not God, but it's like everyone's thinking what you
and
mean.
I was like, but Gumball says gosh darn it. They were like, yeah, but it's like an older like rating, and I was like, gosh dang it, that's like so like, it's like so tricky. Yeah, but yeah, oh man, these ratings. Yeah, no, PG-13. Yeah, I think you can say damn on PG-13.
Oh yeah,
it's so interesting.
Oh no, go.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, really quick, it was always funny to me to hear about like the sort of like behind the scenes of like what people like the writing process would do to kind of like circumvent certain things. But I remember having to record an alt once, and I just remember Rebecca Sugar was directing me in an episode, and I had to like re-record an alt line because it was just like an alternative dialogue and just in case something didn't get approved. I forget which country she said, but she was like, so-and-so doesn't like it when we talk about death.
Oh yeah, dude. Death is like, yeah, that's a big thing. I feel like and it's really funny because it depends on the network as well. I feel like some networks are like they can be very touchy on very different topics. Like recently I was writing a script and anything that mentioned kissing or like dating or crushes or anything, it was like, ooh, and I was like, gosh, like I can't, like I gotta figure out something else, like
It's challenging.
yeah. Because
I
like, if all your jokes are like leaning on this and you're like, well, then I
yeah.
gotta come up with a full new set of jokes.
I mean, that makes me have like think of a question for you guys. I mean, like, I mean, I've talked about this with people about how animation is still sort of gaining legitimacy as like not
Mhm.
just being a children's media,
Yeah.
and also, I mean, on the opposite end, if it's a adult cartoon, it has to be super like
Oh yeah.
So
like
extreme. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's like have finding room or finding spaces to just make a normal script that doesn't have to constrain to like network kids TV or like that. This is
I think
not this is a reason that I'm not an interviewer. I'm like, how do I make that into a
no, but it makes a lot of sense what you're
question?
talking about, because what you're talking about, everybody's talking about in animation. And so there's a couple of things that are really, really hard. Is like, first, you have to be able to sell the show. And a lot of times, in order to sell a show, you got to make it easy on the buyer to understand what it is they're buying. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times what's easier for them to understand is like, well, is this adult? Is this going to have sex, drugs, and rock and roll,
Mm-hmm.
and like gore and shit and swearing, and and it's kind of funny because I even have a friend who told me, he was like, I'm trying to pitch this adult show, and they told me my pitch Bible didn't have enough swear words in it, so I just had to do a fuck pass on it and had a bunch of swear words. It was kind of interesting. And that's true. Like, I feel like for I it might be changing, but like for a long time it was kind of like you had to prove that you're like adult. And if you're kids, it's the
Yeah.
opposite. It's like very like, you're more tame, got to make sure everybody gets it, that everybody understands it, that you have a lesson, like there's a lot more like boxes you got to check. And
Mm-hmm.
but everybody in animation is dying to do because especially when you see stuff like on YouTube there's some really cool stuff that's happening, like Vivzy Pop does these like really cool kind of like very teen, like what a
Mm-hmm.
teen would actually watch, like, oh, it's kids like being like going to parties and being bad and like getting drunk, but it's still kind of safe, like people aren't
Yeah.
getting completely,
Yeah.
like it's
We're
not
not we're
yeah.
not unpacking like trauma or like
Yeah, there's still a little bit of trauma in there, but you're not going like euphoria on it kind of thing.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
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 I think the interesting thing is, I think that people are realizing how made up all this stuff. These are just made up guidelines. Like when you
Mm-hmm.
when you look at a lot of new media, there's a lot of like old tropes in the way that things are pitched and packaged that are being carried over to new media, even though the rules are different.
Mm-hmm.
Like on Big Mouth, they show penises like
Mm-hmm.
on in the show, like and so there are different rules really on Netflix. You could have a show that's just anything, almost,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that people still like want to think in terms of like, is this for like little babies, or is this for like, you know people that failed out of college who were, crazy deviants, and
Crazy
For me.
yeah, for the me, hi
Yeah.
me, but
Hello. No.
I think one interesting thing is, like, recently I've been thinking about, I've been getting jobs making shorts and writing shorts for TikTok, and TikTok has a
Mhm.
whole different set of rules from the other ones. They can be adult, and you can curse, and you can show a certain amount of blood, but it's like the
Yeah.
line is like really like, you can show poop, but you can't show it coming out. You can show, like, there's all these like different things, and like at the end of the day, if someone wants to report the video, they just will. And
Yes.
it's as
Right.
simple as, I've had a video taken down one time. I posted it, and it's because like a kid falls on a skateboard and his leg breaks in half, and and somebody reported it. But I've also posted that a different time, and it never got reported. So it's just like, yeah, I don't know,
It's
it's
so
all arbitrary.
It's so true. It's so crazy because a friend of mine who does comics and posts them on social media got reported because he had a fake like a plastic succulent in his comic. So it's a cartoony comic. It's
Mhm.
cartoony, and the succulent, the plastic succulent, when it's told that it's not a real plant or something, like it hangs itself, and people are like, oh, it's self-harm and suicide and it's really bad, and then he got demonetized
Oh my
because
God.
of it. And it's like, and you're like, whoa, like even plastic plants can't,
Yeah,
it's
Wow.
on YouTube,
but yeah.
you can say like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna kill myself" in a video game. In a video game, as long as you say in a video game after it, like it's
Oh, right,
safe.
right.
So people
That's
all
how
the
the thing is
time,
like, I'm gonna kill
Yeah.
myself in Minecraft.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
people just say that now. They're just like, "Oh, I'm
Yeah.
gonna kill myself in a video
And
game." Like,
I've also heard it turned into I'm gonna Minecraft myself.
Interesting.
it's so
Okay,
silly.
I no, I kind of love this internet lingo because I've heard people, because the word kill and death can be really, really traumatic, and
Mhm.
so I've heard people say unalive
Oh
unless
yeah,
instead of kill,
yeah.
and I'm like, interesting, and I kind of want to put that in a cartoon at some point because I'm like, I want to know, and if because sometimes the note is going to be like unalive. I don't understand what this means. Can you be more clear, but not say kill? It's like.
Well, it is funny, and I feel like TikTok and social media has been a huge sort of catalyst to create all of these weird not words for the things that you're trying to like
Mhm.
get around.
It's like
Mhm.
mathematical, like it's like
Yeah.
that might be a curse, it might not, like, but it's just
Mm.
you're just making up a word that like people know that's probably a teenager, so
Honestly,
going
Right.
hell yeah, whatever.
Adventure Time was so good about that. I thought Adventure Time was I thought it was
Yeah.
so creative with that, and I was like, that's why this stands out so much to me. Like even just oxymoron was funny because I don't even know if you can say moron in a cartoon,
Hmm.
but you can
Oh,
say
that's so funny.
oxymoron.
That's smart. Yeah, I mean, I loved Adventure Time,
Yeah.
especially when I was like kind of in that like cuspy age where I wanted to watch shows that I didn't feel like were like talking down to me, but like
Mhm.
were like still like silly and whimsical. And yeah, I mean, Adventure
Yep.
Time was a huge part of my like late middle school, early high school.
Yeah. Oh man, that's such a great show. So, are you thinking of doing some more writing after the short, or?
Yeah, I definitely have a few things that I um definitely am I have another short film draft that I've like gotta like do another pass over, and it's also kind of like how okay, I need to there are so many things, especially with shorts. I mean, I'm sure it's similar with animation too, where you're kind of like this is gonna have to be like a passion project
Mhm.
where you're not necessarily sure what's going to come of it, but you just want to make it because it's a story that for whatever reason you feel it needs to be told.
Mhm.
And then also I have this like mini series idea that I've been like kicking around in my head for a long time, but without saying much because I don't want to like speak too much on it because it's not really fully formed and it could change a lot before it ends up getting like pitched or anything. I want to write something about child actors because that's like a
Mm.
topic that is really near and dear to me, and I think that a lot of, I guess what I am interested in talking about too is like kind of the middle of the road level of success of child
Mhm.
actors where you're not necessarily like Hannah Montana or
Mm.
Or
Macaulay
Jeanette.
Culkin.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
you're just kind of in the industry as a kid, and what is it to be in that world?
Do you want to make Entourage but with kids?
Kind of. But it's also but it's funny though because like I guess kind of the impasse I'm at with it right now is like how do I hire child actors to tell a story about being critical of child actors?
Oh no,
Dude,
you're
yeah.
gonna be
Oof.
under such a microscope. That's so funny.
I know. So I'm like,
Just
so that's
hire
kind
only
of,
adults that look like
well, yeah.
kids.
Well, that's
Yeah.
someone was like, you could just do like the Pen 15 route, and I'm like,
Yeah, I was literally thinking that. Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, yeah. I think it depends on how hard I would come down on like, is this like condemning child
Yeah.
acting and that as like a thing, which
Yeah.
I don't really feel like it would, because that's not how I feel about my
Yeah.
experience. But
Mhm.
it just feels like something that's so fraught and really unique. But it's also like, I also kind of feel like I want to humanize stage parents,
Yeah, yeah.
like, because
Mhm.
I feel like that's such a interesting, I mean, like, not to say that there aren't like terrible stage parents who like steal all their kids money, or
Mhm.
like those things do happen, or like Drew Barrymore situations where it's like, yeah,
Mhm.
my mom brought me to Studios 54 when I was like 9. So but like there is so much room in between where it's like, I don't know, especially growing up in LA, you know, I've talked to so many people who are like, oh yeah, I'd let my kid do commercials. Like it's like they'd have a college fund, you
Mhm.
know, and and there are these like practical reasons where it's like, I don't want my kid to be like famous. I just, want, they'd have fun. If they'd have fun, why not
Mhm.
help them make some money to start themselves off? And I mean, I get it. I mean, I did end up dropping out of college, but I did not take out student loans, which was
That's really
good.
cool.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And as much as, I do have like, I mean, obviously any experience can, create all sort of ripple effects in a life. And yeah, child acting was also hard in many
Mhm.
ways, but I you take the good with the bad, and I'm a big fan of nuance.
Yeah, that makes a
That's
lot of
more
sense.
interesting anyway. I think have nuanced take.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool. Do you can you kind of like send your ideas and stuff to your agent, or are they just like a voice agent, like, or would you need to like contact
uh
somebody else for like pitching and writing and all that?
yeah, probably. I wouldn't go to my voiceover agent, but I did just sign with a new theatrical agent. That's
Hmm.
another thing. I
Mm,
am trying to do more theatrical stuff these days. Just,
mm,
I mean, not, and I do love voice acting, but I think in the same way that we were just talking about with like sort of the limits of like the storytelling you're able to tell
mhm,
in animation right now, I think that my passion is just like storytelling in general, and
mm.
I love acting, and I've really fallen back in love with the kind of acting you need to memorize lines for. And so I signed with a new theatrical agent not too long ago, and I'm really excited to be able to sort of like pursue that
Mhm.
angle a little bit more seriously, which, obviously it's funny because it really, having a extensive voiceover resume really does not translate
Oh
over
yeah.
to on camera stuff. Like, for all intents and purposes, I might as well be like fresh, like what
Brand new.
someone who,
Yeah.
a transplant that just
Oh.
moved here from Ohio. But it is what it is. I mean, I'm still incredibly lucky to be able to have been a part of really cool things. And but it's funny though. Like I booked my first, they call them co-star roles, where it's like you
Mm,
just, which is funny because it's a bit of a, people think when you say co-star that it means that you're like second billing or like part of the
mhm.
main cast, but usually for television it just means that like you're the person who's like, would you like coffee, or like, just
Oh,
like one
really?
person. It's
Yeah.
like usually like you're a day player, you're there for
Interesting.
like a day. And so I booked a co-star spot in the new season of I Think You Should Leave, which was
Oh.
so much fun to
Oh my
work
So
god.
on.
cool.
I really loved working on that. But it was funny because when you watch, like, my face was entirely cut out from the final cut, and you could
Oh
still hear, I
no.
like, my line was still in it, they just didn't
Mhm.
cut to me. So
Right.
it kind of just ended up being another voiceover gig, which is kind of funny.
That's so funny.
But it was still awesome. Like I loved being a part of it, but it is just like one of those things where it's like I don't want to say no matter how much success you have, but for the most part, like there's when you want to branch out and try a new thing, even if it is like kind of close to the thing you've been doing, you're still gonna have to try to like earn your stripes, I guess.
No, it's super true. I really relate to that as well because I feel like I think for Sean and I, like we've been like board artists for a very long time, and we've been trying to pitch shows and like kind of like move up a little bit in the ladder, and it really does feel like you're like starting from not from scratch, but almost because you're like, look, I can write, I can direct, I can do all of these things. Believe me, I
Yeah.
know you don't see it yet, but you know,
No, and a
Yeah,
lot of the
yeah.
time it's like you got to do that thing where it's like I will make you believe.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's, where the shorts come in and
Yeah.
like kind of those like proof of concepty things where you're like, did you like this? Well, how about if you gave me money and I could make
Yeah.
this?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like trying to figure out that way to transition from working on someone's project, which sometimes ends up paying better than at least
Yes.
in the beginning stages of being able to sort of do whatever you want on your own
Mm-hmm.
thing. So yeah, there's that balance. Oh, I actually recently got my first SAG voice actor role,
Congratulations.
and
Wow.
speaking of trying new things, but the funny part about it is a lot of it is actually just on the cusp of my voice range, so it ended up being a more difficult or nerve-wracking uh role to do because if my voice just gets a little bit hoarse, I can't do it.
Oh,
Is it
yeah.
because it goes low. I'm a like a an announcer of like a voiceover
No,
on
that's real.
an anti-vape campaign, so I'm
Oh,
like
funny.
vaping repeatedly can cause, like it's like that
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
voice.
yeah.
um but I wanted to ask you, have you ever like landed a role that you realized like this voice is hard for me to do for a long time, and like
Yeah.
how did you deal with that? Did you like train in that voice, like
Well,
to build your tolerance up, like
luckily, I think part of the benefit of like having been doing this for a long time is I do feel like I don't know how to say it. I kind of feel like my vocal cords must be like pretty malleable or
steel?
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I
Mhm.
mean it is tough, and I had a voiceover teacher or like I've never had like an ongoing coach, but I've done like workshops,
Hmm.
and I had a teacher tell me like don't do an audition in a voice that you could not sustain for
Hmm.
like a
Mhm.
3 hour 4 hour session,
Yeah.
or
Mhm.
like because the thing is like even if it's a fun voice you will wreck it. And he was like an older
Yeah.
voiceover actor, and he was saying like I would like wreck my voice to do these characters, and it was like not sustainable. And the thing is, if you're a voice actor, your voice is your instrument and you have to take care of it. But I do think that, there are things you can do. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, like that's great advice if you have not yet booked a role that you're
Mhm.
Sure,
not,
sure. Yeah.
you're not
Because you want to say yes to everything.
challenging. Yeah, exactly. But I do think, most
Yeah.
voice actors end up having their little arsenal of tips and tricks. I mean, obviously, we're big tea and honey and lemon drinkers.
Hmm.
Um, I absolutely hate throat coat tea. I hate it so much. But
Oh, okay.
but the taste.
Recently,
I
I've
think it's
come
effective.
across
Oh
recently I've
yeah.
come across this tea that it was designed by metal vocalists to help
Oh.
sustain screaming. That I'm assuming it's a kind of throat coat
Yeah,
ish tea,
yeah.
but that I thought that was interesting. Like the logo on it is like metal, whatever. But um, speaking of which, I've always thought it was interesting that like before I got like an official kind of like SAG role, I had been sort of typecast as like either monsters or like gruff voiced or like screaming roles.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've always been in metal bands and my voice can withstand a little bit more of that.
Sure, yeah.
Have you ever gone out for like a, like a zombie role or like a monster, like, like that sort of thing?
I'll be honest, I don't get those auditions, but I have occasionally. It's funny. I mean, so they added a new contract into SAG for podcasts and like scripted
Oh.
podcasts. And so I've worked on a couple of those, and I guess the people liked me, so they brought me back. And it was one of those things where it's like it's just a session fee.
Yeah.
So if you're there, they'll try to get you to do as many characters as possible. And so they'll
Mhm.
Huh.
be like, can you do a goblin? And I'll be like, yes, yes, I can do a goblin.
That's hilarious.
Sure. Because I feel like it's one of those things where, I mean, you get typecast. You
Mhm.
like most of the time, most of the auditions I get are for the like plucky sidekick girl.
Sure, sure.
Mm.
Now,
Like,
can I
and that's cool. I like plucky sidekick girl. I
I,
Mhm.
consider myself plucky.
I sort of need to hear your goblin voice.
Oh
If
gosh.
if you're willing,
But
like if you had to do a goblin voice, I'm so curious.
it's so funny because I don't think it's any good, but they still went for it. But they
That's
were
so
like,
sick.
"Oh, see, like I don't know, I just
No, that's amazing. No, I have two female voice actor friends who one of them did the clicking voice in the original Last of
Last
Us
of Us.
video game.
Oh, cool.
And uh they're a metal vocalist also. And then I have
Mm-hmm.
another friend who was like the female predator in the video game, which is another monster voice. So I'm always curious, like if there's like a super niche, like women that can do like a monster voice. Is that actually like, oh, well, like you're down to like do like a little like like a little like monster voice? Is that like sought after, or like do the people that can do that kind of hold on to those and get all those roles?
I would imagine so. I mean, I don't know about women specifically, but I remember because D. Bradley Baker is the voice of Lion on Steven Universe,
Mm.
and he was doing a lot of the monsters as well. And he, I feel like, is one of those actors that, like, if you need like monstery type things, like he can do that really well. I did So one thing I do a lot, or at least fairly often, it's been a while since the last time I did a looping gig or like ADR gig, which is really fun voiceover work, which is like post production for live action stuff usually. Sometimes it's post production for like large budget animated movies. But it's like if there's like a crowd scene, it's like you're doing like background voice acting, because when you're recording a movie, the extras aren't actually talking in the background, and then they actually have to go back in and post and add in all of that like sound design. And I actually did ADR for the live action Titan show.
Oh.
um, which was really funny, because one of the things that they were having me do was do like additional efforts for Raven.
Oh,
Okay,
nice.
um
okay.
which was awesome, but also like when she would like, because also it was like super like goth and like I don't know,
Like
like
you're not trying very hard. Like
yeah, but
actions that you're not trying super hard at, like that kind of thing.
yeah, well, but also it was funny because when her powers would activate, her eyes would go black, and like it was like they would like the sound designer wanted all these like
Oh,
stuff in the
interesting.
background. So we would have like whisper passes that we would do where we'd be like, we would all like not fake words. So we were trying to like sound like we were speaking like Latin or tongues or whatever. And it was like all of us in there. And then be like, cool, can we get another one of those? Like it was
So funny because I saw on your IMDb that it said Looper, and I was like, "What is this?" And when I googled it, all I could get was the friggin' movie called Looper, and I was like, "This is
oh
not
yeah.
helping."
Yes.
It's so cool. I didn't know that was a thing where like you would, but that makes so much sense though that they would get like.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of, I'm not gonna lie, it's like a weird, it's kind of if you know, you know, because a lot of the time the people that they cast from is like a pretty limited pool. It's like, because,
Mm.
and honestly, I don't even work that often in it because a lot of the loop leader group people, I don't know, there's a really funny article about it actually. I think it's called like Acting's Secret Mafia or something funny like that. I'm actually pardon the clicky clacking. I kind of want to find it. So it's the Hollywood Reporter, and it's an article called "The Mafia of the Acting World: Hollywood's Secret Loop Groups."
Oh my
Oh, that's
god.
so funny. Oh my god, reporters are
Sounds so
so
serious.
crazy.
I
Yeah, yeah,
know.
yeah.
Wait, I'm gonna send for just, on your own time if you want to look at it. I'm just
Yes.
gonna send the link in the Zoom chat. But it's so funny. Like it's a really fun gig, but yeah, because the thing is, I mean, not to be gauche and talk about money, but like it's the you basically get paid the SAG day rate,
Mm.
and so you're just like you get to get paid like the same amount as if you were actually on the show,
Hmm.
which
Mm.
which is it's like as a day player, not as like the main cast.
Okay.
um
Mhm.
but it's because it doesn't typically go to loop groups don't typically audition.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
it's
that's
just a
nice.
weird,
Yeah.
very insular world that occasionally I'll get to be a part of, but it's usually just like very specific stuff. And most of the time it's usually for stuff that they have scenes where they need like high schoolers or elementary, or not elementary, middle schoolers.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. That's really interesting. It's really interesting. All these like little like side gigs and rules and stuff. I didn't know, but like you can't give like the amount of roles that you give a voice actor will change the amount of money you pay them. And
Oh,
that was a
interesting.
yeah, that was a thing because when we were casting for my short, I was like, oh well, can't this person do like this and this, and they're like, whoa, chill out. And I was like, wait, what? And they're like, no, they can't do more, like like there's a premium, like like they could do, you can do two, and then it's like if you do more than two for the same unit project, then
Interesting.
yeah, there's like an added fee, and then each additional role is like
Do
an
you
added
know
fee.
how many you asked for that person to do? Because I'm like, should I be talking to my agent about this?
Yeah. From my so my thing was it's really short, right? It's only like 7 minutes, but it's like I think it's the same fee if you do two voices, but if you tack
Okay.
on a third, then it's there's a little bonus, and then
Oh,
if you tack on a fourth, then there's a little added bonus, etc., etc. Because because in my saying there's like two main characters and they have like pretty much like 80% of the lines, and then there's like a couple of like extra characters that have a line here and there, and I was like, well, here's like they could do all of these, it's not that much, and they're like, no, but it's a different character, so it's like,
okay.
yeah.
That's making sense to me because I'm remembering I have been on a project like where in a group record, they were like, can you do this one? Can you do this one? Oh, but you already did two. So we're now, can you
Yes.
do this one? So
Mm-hmm.
that's ringing a bell to me now, but I didn't realize. I thought that they were just diversifying the voices, but no.
No,
There was some
there's some
pragmatism at
laws.
hand.
Yeah, you're protected. You're protected from being overworked. And it's really interesting. I didn't I it's like it's really funny how like if you haven't been on that side of making the show, you absolutely don't know. It's so interesting.
Now,
Yeah.
I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't mention sort of like the current climate in the industry and
Yeah.
SAG and the Writers Guild and the strike and the vote on the strike. And I was just wondering, I was just interested in asking for how you see it affecting your own personal work, or are you changing lanes a little bit to prep for it? Are you, like, I'm just curious how it's
Yeah.
affecting you and your take on it.
Well, as for right now, complete solidarity with the WGA. I hope that they are able to get a fair deal. SAG is possibly maybe going to strike. I honestly don't know. It's anyone's guess at this point. They just extended negotiations. I guess by the time this episode comes out, the people listening will know already if SAG ends up striking or not, because I think they only prolonged the negotiations by about a week. But I'm actually not sure about how much of my work is going to be affected, because the deal is with the AMPTP, which is the I forget what the acronym stands for.
I think it's the American Producer
Yeah. But it's basically like all of the biggest producers in Hollywood. So, Netflix is in the negotiating room, Paramount, Warner Brothers, Disney, all the big studio heads are there. But with voiceover, like I don't know. Like I don't know if it's going to affect, like, for example, like video games or audiobooks.
Right.
Because audiobooks are another thing that I've started to do more of recently, and it's one of those things where it's like I just don't know. I just don't know.
Dude, what was the longest audiobook you read? I've always wondered. My sister and I have always wondered, and we like came up with this crazy idea, and it's like, is there like a school where like you have to do an exam and read an entire audiobook
for the exam? Yeah.
No,
study for it?
There isn't, because
like,
the first time I had to do a full audiobook, I was like, oh man.
That's so,
I say I had to do, like I was like forced to do it. I was like, I want to do this. But I think the longest one was probably one of the more recent ones I did, which was some fantasy novels that I think were Audible exclusives, I think. Or maybe not, I don't know. But I think when all was like edited, I think they came out to like 13 or 14 hours.
Oh my goodness. That's a lot of voice. That's like a marathon for you.
I will say that is like the endurance training of voiceover work for sure. Like that is when for me, that is when I need to pull out all of the stops for like taking care of my voice. Because usually the days are like I think I did it in a week. And I think we were recording from like 10 to 4 to 5. Like it was kind of like a 9 to 5 for that week. And you're probably taking more breaks than but it's intense. I kind of realized in the middle of the last one that I did, I was like, I need to have like an audiobook go bag where I have like, because I'm usually reading off of like an iPad or a laptop. So I'm like, I need like blue light glasses because my eyes start to hurt by the end of the day. I have this throat spray called Singer Saving Grace. And I also don't like the taste of that, but it's fast. It's a throat spray. You're done. And another thing, I don't know, I just like sitting for a long time. Sometimes if I get like nasally for whatever reason, I'm like, I need like a nasal spray. It's honestly kind of gross, but it's like all these little things where you're like actually taking care of your voice as an instrument.
Wow, that's so crazy. That's so long. Because, like I listen to a ton of audiobooks, and there's like, I've listened to those. They're like 15 hours. And I can't even listen to a 15-hour audiobook in a week. Like I need more time.
Like let alone actually be the one that's reading it.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like,
you're like, I'm tired.
I mean, I will say it's not my favorite voiceover work just because of the intensity.
It's so long, yeah. I mean that's why you didn't want to do in front of camera stuff. You're on set so long. It's like this is like
yeah.
And it's challenging, but it is fun if it's like a good book. I remember I read for 2 novels by a really great YA author named Tracy Chee. One of them I just narrated 2 chapters because it was kind of like multiple perspectives throughout the book, but it was about the story. It was a historical fiction book about young people in Japanese internment camps in America.
Oh wow.
And so it was like a really I was so proud of the work that I did on that book, and I really enjoyed being a part of it. And I was really happy when Tracy G asked me back to narrate another more fantasy book that she had written that was really inspired by Japanese folklore.
That's so cool. Because you have
Yeah,
Japanese, yeah.
I'm a quarter Japanese. My mom's half, and so it was really cool to be able to tell both of those stories. I mean, especially the book about the Japanese
Yeah.
internment camp is called "We Are Not Free." And it was
Mhm.
really, I really enjoyed that book, just even like separate from my like work on it. And I mean that affected my family, so it was like really cool to be part of telling that
That's
story. And it's also like it's obviously heartbreaking, but it's also heartwarming, like about like
yeah.
family and staying
Mhm.
together through hard times. But
Yeah, it's so good that there's like more books written about it. I remember, it's crazy because I moved to the US when I was 13, 14, and I had never heard of Japanese internment camps until I randomly, for some reason, I was at the library. I spent a lot of time in the library when I first moved out here because I was like, I couldn't speak English well enough. So I was reading most of the time, and I picked a book and it was about that, and I was like, Dad, did you know? Did you know this happened?
wow,
Because we don't really talk about it in Europe. It's like
yeah.
people don't really talk about it a
No, it's
ton.
not.
Yeah.
It's not it's kind of an, unfortunately, it's a very overlooked part of
Hmm.
American history. Luckily, I mean, I feel like I grew up in LA. I went to a very
Mm.
progressive school. We did talk about it in my history classes,
Oh
but
wow.
yet as an adult, I've met people who grew up in different places, and they're like, "Oh yeah, no, we never covered that."
Oh, that's so crazy.
But yeah, it is it is what it is. No, it's not. But
No, it's
I
really cool. Yeah,
mhm.
it's no, I was just gonna say it's just really cool that you got to do that and kind of like, kind of what's the word? It's just kind of like, yeah, help spread kind of awareness about it. Because I do feel like now, at least for me, I consume a lot of audiobooks because when I work, I don't. I at least I feel like I'm like still learning stuff because I can
hmm
draw and listen at the same time, but I can't like reading on paper is just like time commitment. So like it kind of is
right.
making it like way more accessible to a lot more people.
Definitely, definitely. I mean, I used to be a huge bookworm as a kid, and I definitely miss having time to read in the same
Mm.
way that I did when I was younger. I really like, honestly, I do like audiobooks, but I have kind of bad like auditory processing. Not like bad, but like it
Mm.
doesn't stick as well for me. So
Mm-hmm.
like it depends on what it is. Like
Yeah.
if it's just something like interesting where I don't feel like I need to be hanging on to every word, uh, audiobooks are great. And there are a
Mm-hmm.
lot of really great readers, but a lot of the time I just feel like I'm not really getting any of it unless I'm
Mhm.
like physically am looking at it. But
Yeah.
that is just me. That is just me.
Well, I feel like a question that comes up for me in my own life a lot is does what I do matter?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's nice to hear about you finding a project that you feel like matters or in some way makes things better. I mean, I think that entertainment is always important and it's always good, but most of the time I work on very, it's like funny, stupid things, and then my partner is works at an environmental justice nonprofit and raises money and helps
Oh wow.
communities that are polluted, and I'm like, man, what I do does not feel like it matters sometimes. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I understand. And I honestly, I mean, I didn't really think about that component of being an artist until working on Steven Universe and like, actually like, well, even just watching the show and being like, oh, there's some deep stuff going on here.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And then like meeting people at conventions who are like, this changed my life. And I was like, whoa, that's
You're
crazy.
changing lives.
But it
Wow.
is true because that is a huge thing and like that is a major part of art. But even if that's not like kind of at the forefront of like a project having like a strong message, it's still, like I think that art is really, really important. And even like, I mean, on like kids animated shows, I mean, I love watching cartoons and I like you never know what like someone's gonna like connect with because it's like it might not be the show message itself, but it could have been like, this is what I would watch every day when I came home from school, and like
Mhm.
those stories. It's like these hold meaning. The eh, art has meaning.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure. Yeah, no, I agree.
it
I
really does. Yeah, it really does. I'm so surprised sometimes, like, when reading comments on, like, because I see what you're saying, Sean, where, like, sometimes you're like, oh, I just draw the funnies, but then you like scroll down the comments on, like, whoever's just making something kind of like funny, if it's a comic or whatever, and then people are like, yeah, it just like really made my day better. Like, I was having like a shit day and I saw this
yeah.
like really dumb joke, and now I feel a little better, and you're like, okay, yeah, this is what I do it for. It's like, it's really nice.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, no, it's really amazing to be reminded of the ways that your work impacts others.
Yeah, no, it's true. And it's nice to hear that from other people, because sometimes it's hard to believe from yourself, but seeing how when other people, are going through, like, oh, well, like just a little reminder that like what you're doing could be important to somebody, and yeah, I don't know,
Oh
that's
my
really
God,
nice.
yeah. I mean, I've already joked a few times since we've been talking about like reading comments or like
Yeah.
name searching or doing those things. And, while it can be detrimental because you hear someone say, that was the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Like, what, like those things are like, why did you, whatever. Like,
This didn't impact my life.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Negative comments. Yeah. But like the reason, like I feel like the positive end, like why sometimes you go back on, I mean, sometimes, I definitely have had my masochistic streaks before, but like, you find those moments where people are like, no, this like touched me in a way. And that feeling of knowing that something you were a part of did that is powerful, and it can really keep you going, because I mean, I think as artists we all have days where we are like, why am I doing this?
Well,
Yeah,
s-
dude.
s-
Yeah.
speaking of feeling like, why am I doing this? I think that everybody, most people at least, go through some creative block. Not to mention the name of the podcast too much, but I figured that maybe I could ask you, whether it's when you're writing or whether you're not sure about what a voice should be, or an acting thing. I'm curious about when you tend to go through creative block and how you end up dealing with it.
That's a great question. I mean, luckily, I feel like it's nice to have multiple different kinds of creative outlets, because then you can kind of like switch gears into focusing on something else and kind of like take the pressure off. But also sometimes you don't have the luxury of doing that. And so I think kind of like I don't have these things all figured out. I kind of feel like sometimes you this is terrible. I'm like, sometimes you just gotta push through.
Well, the thing is, some people have
Yeah.
like weird little tips or
Yeah.
tricks or a little ritual they do. I'm just curious about
Yeah,
your
no,
process.
no. I mean, I definitely think for me, at least with voiceover specifically, one of my least favorite things after I've done the audition is actually going back and listening to the different takes I
Oh.
did and
Mm.
cutting and splicing it and trying to figure out which was the best to submit. And that is often the part of the process that I get the most stuck in. Because I think, a lot of the time most people are their own worst critic. And
Mhm.
if you're not your own worst critic, I'd be, questioning your ego. But, maybe that's my own inner critic taking the mic there. But like genuinely though, like that is when I get the most like stuck, and I'm like that's when I find myself reaching for my phone and going on social media and like doing whatever I can to like distract myself. And sometimes I I literally or not literally will throw my phone across the room and just, kind of have to like remind myself why I am doing this.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
sort of sometimes you gotta pep talk yourself into doing stuff. And also if time allows, sometimes it's good to just walk away, get some
Mhm.
food,
Mhm.
drink some water. And also, like, if you can power nap, I think power napping can
Yeah.
be really helpful to just kind of like reset your brain. Like not even like if you necessarily like fall asleep or like even just like meditating or just like kind of like quieting your brain down so that way you can actually have room to like let stuff come in.
If your pep talk voice had a voice, what do you think your pep talk voice would sound like?
It honestly would not be that motivational. It'd be like, come on, you got to do it. You got to do it. You can. It's honestly a little bit like it's like almost like transatlantic, like come on, kid, you got to get it back. You got to get back in the ring.
Just randomly, it's like a little like black and white version of you. It's like
It's
wearing
like
like
it just like it has a little newsy cap on, and it's like, come on, boss.
I love that. I thought it was gonna be peppy and fun, and then
Come on.
you're just
Nope.
kind of more like, no.
Nope.
Come on, you little so and so, pick yourself up.
I really wish. It was so funny. I was having this conversation with my boyfriend actually yesterday because I do have a tendency to kind of like I handle stress well, but I acquire stress readily. Like I don't think like I like crack under pressure very much, but I definitely like get stressed. And it's funny though, and I was trying to explain like yeah, sure, I rile myself up really like badly, but the feeling of like succeeding afterwards feels like amazing. And he was like, yeah, but what if you didn't, like, you could still be like satisfied even if you didn't put yourself through that. And I was like, nah.
You're chasing that rush.
Yeah. But I'm also like in school, I was a massive procrastinator. I am definitely like a burn the midnight oil kind of person, which is something that, you know, I'm working on. But genuinely, I do think that I am a fan of positivity. I'm not like you. I do think that you can get more with a carrot than with a stick, you know, in terms of like motivation. But I do tend to egg myself on with like, you said you would do it, you committed. Like,
Sure.
this is so bad. I'm like, think of all the people who are going to be disappointed in you.
It's like a little kid like double dog daring you in your head. Like,
Yeah,
I dare you to
exactly.
do it, you little wimp.
Exactly. I bet you can't do it. I bet you
my
can't.
God.
No, that's
So
not.
funny.
I'm like, I wanna send like positive messaging to the kids at home. I'm like, believe in yourself.
But it's funny. I think it's like everybody's got to do it differently, you know? Like, I feel like I think all of this, at the end of the day, this can be very relatable to a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, going back to what I said about being motivated by spite, which by the way, on the second page, love the little race car. I haven't been like actively commenting, but I have been watching all of the drawings being made.
That's you driven by spite.
I love them all. Yeah, it is true. I kind of feel like it is a powerful motivator for me to have like the feeling it's like I don't know, like there are days where it's like, oh my God, I have like 4 or 5 auditions to get done in one day. And I like start the day feeling super overwhelmed. And having that sort of like game plan session with myself, I personally like to start with, if I have like a list of tasks, I like to knock them out from easiest to hardest.
Sure. Yep. You're ramping up. Yeah.
Yeah, because I will feel like I have accomplished more if I like check the first 3 things off the to-do list.
Yeah, sure.
Even if they take me cumulatively less time than whatever the last thing will do. But it's like those little hits of like, you've got this, you accomplished something. And like those little moments where you can pat yourself on the back add up.
That's the same reason why I give the advice to young filmmakers or animators to make short stuff first. Like make short, make something that's like 7 seconds long and you can put on TikTok or whatever. And like you could maybe get that done in a day or 2, and then you'll get that little dopamine hit, you get that little boost, and you're like, okay, now I could do something a little longer. You know, that gives me confidence.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Even sometimes when I clean up storyboards or my comic pages, I rough it all out, and then I'm like, oh, this is going to be a hard panel. put it aside. Even if it's the first panel, I just start, here's
Mm-hmm.
just the face. It's gonna be fast drawing this little face right here. Or like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I'm like, okay, I knock these out and then I do the big one with all the like lines and
Yeah. I even what I don't know if it's a saying or if I've just heard this, but it's like the hardest thing is looking at an empty page.
Yep.
Yep.
No, it's
Yep.
true.
100%.
Whether it's going to get filled up with words or pictures.
Yeah,
It's daunting.
It
Yeah.
really is. It's so true. I have a ton of questions for you. We got a lot of questions from our patrons and a lot of questions from Instagram. Fortunately, we managed to get through a bunch of them through this interview. But I do want to ask a couple from our patrons. Thank you so much, patrons. Hi, hi, hi.
Hello.
From our patron, Brother to Drummer. He asks, do you sing?
I do. I really enjoyed being able to sing on Steven Universe. I kind of, it's funny because I get auditions sometimes where I have to include singing samples, and that's really, I kind of, it's so daunting because I know so many actors who are trained with like musical theater backgrounds, but
Wow.
that's really not where my singing background, like I took singing lessons as a kid, but it was more so like, I don't know. I just like the kind of thing where it's like, oh, take a singing class. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
You're not
Like do
formally
some
trained
vocal
in
warm
it. Yeah.
ups. Yeah. And also when you're recording yourself singing in like a booth,
Oh my
you,
God.
you,
Yeah.
you, you hear all of the little ways that you're flat or sharp, or you didn't have enough breath to support a note. And it really gets me in my head. So, but I do sing. And I actually, I used to, I mean, I also play music. I play guitar and bass.
Oh,
And
nice.
I did have like a little like singer songwriter like dream when I was younger, and who knows, maybe I'll revisit that. But I
Nice.
do love I love music just generally.
What's your go-to karaoke song?
Oh, that's a great question. I actually have a note in my notes app for that, because when I go to a karaoke bar,
You forget
I was,
immediately
yes.
every song. Yeah.
It really depends on my
Oh,
level of inebriation. Um, but it depends. Okay. So one of my favorites to do is if I have a friend, I'll do Love Shack by the
oh
B-52s.
yes,
That's
that's a
a
I'll
good
good
do
one.
one.
the guy part because I love doing that voice. I'm like, bang on the door, baby. Like
That's hilarious.
I love doing that. If I
Yeah.
feel like flexing, I like to do You Ought to Know by Alanis Morissette if I'm like really
Oh.
feeling like being like
Ooh.
very, like if I'm like feeling some type of way.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I really like to do a little bit of a 2000s deep cut. I love Ashley Simpson's Pieces of Me. I feel like that sounds so
Oh
silly.
man, that's
I
amazing. Yeah.
I like, because the thing is, I I like to be a little bit silly with karaoke, even if
Sure,
Mm-hmm.
sure.
I'm like, I like want to be like singing, like I'm
Yeah.
singing. I want to kind of have like doing a slight impression of the person singing,
Mm-hmm.
because that to
Mm-hmm.
me
That's
adds like an
fun.
extra layer of fun to it.
Yes. Oh my gosh. What's the drunk song? The drunk Grace at
Oh,
karaoke.
it's been known to happen. Yeah, okay. So one thing that's like embarrassing that'll happen to me is that I love like dad rock or like older songs, and
Oh man.
but I'll forget that like my voice is like, I have a lower, my lower range is good, but it's not like that good. So there have been times where I'll be like, oh, Jesse's girl, and then I'll be like at the mic, like be trying to be like, Jesse is a friend, like I like can't hit it.
Dude,
So
straight up that was me when I did that voiceover session. There's one note where it's like, and that's what hurts your body. And I
yeah.
remember I was trying to do that every time, but the night before I got a sore throat, so I was like, buddy, and then I
Oh
was like,
no.
shit, and I had to I had to like bring it up. I had to do it not as low during some of the record, but
Yes.
yeah.
Sometimes you gotta make it work. You gotta make it work.
Yeah. Don't let them see you
Um,
sweat.
exactly.
That's so great. Man, I love that. That was a great question with great answers.
My tangent, my tangent from
Yes.
the original Patreon question
I
about
love that.
karaoke.
I think it's such a great question, like to ask like people's like karaoke go-to songs, because I feel like you can like know so much about someone with that.
Yeah,
Oh
their
yeah.
guilty pleasures too come out a
Yeah.
lot. My guilty
Oh,
pleasure
definitely.
is I like rap rock and new metal, like cringy,
Oh,
like that's what
Oh
I do.
hell
I
yeah.
I do like the cringiest songs. Like I'll do like Limp Bizkit or Linkin
Oh
Park or
hell
like
yeah.
and
Oh,
just the most embarrassing.
I love cringy karaoke. I
It's so
actually
good. I don't know.
on the
yes.
on the 4th of July, I went to a friend's barbecue and they had like a little like at home like karaoke machine and people were like pulling out like it was so funny. Like someone was doing that song. It's like this is the story of a girl who
Oh yeah.
couldn't travel
Yeah,
the
yeah,
whole
yeah.
world. Like someone was doing that, but it was so funny because obviously that was the only part of the song he knew. So that it was just like during the other parts.
Yeah, every karaoke, I'm like, wake me up
Oh yeah,
inside,
that's such a good
wake
one. That's such a
up.
good one.
And it's a duet too, but one of the duetters just goes, wake me up. Like they just like every once in a while
Yes,
they come in like, save
that's so
me.
good.
Just
This
into
is
the
this is making me want to pull up my karaoke notes app because I do have that. Oh, I love When You Were Young by the Killers because I like
Sure,
imitating the
sure.
voice. Oh, I have
Mhm.
Life is a Highway on here.
Well, that's a funny take on karaoke though. Is like some people do karaoke because it's like, oh, that's the song that like I can sing the loudest and be a fool. You think about karaoke in voices. Like you're like,
Mhm.
I want to do an impression of this person's unique voice, and I think that's really
It's kind
interesting.
of telling when you because I haven't really thought of it like that
Yeah,
until
what a
like
voice
talking about this,
actor.
but I'm like,
Yeah.
and it's almost like that says something about my career.
Tell me you're a voice actor without telling me you're a voice actor.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
also I've done Off to the Races by Lana Del Rey before, which was really funny. I don't know if you all know
Oh,
that song,
yeah. No, no, no.
but
That song's a
but
good
Oh.
it's
song.
so much longer than I
Oh,
remembered
yeah.
it being. There's like so many different parts, and so by the end I was like, okay.
That's so
How
funny.
funny is an impression, when it's like for like 5 minutes, 6 minutes,
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly.
Like,
And there's some songs that you can do in these like, these like little karaoke rooms that are okay to do in these, and but they're absolutely not okay to do in the bar karaoke.
dude, that's
Like
funny.
I love to do Barbie Girl because I think it's so silly and dumb.
Awesome.
People get
And I
mad.
love, yeah, but then at first my favorite kind of song is like when people are like groaning at the beginning and then by the end of the song everybody's singing it. That's like my favorite kind of song to put on.
Yes.
And so Barbie Girl is great for that, but when you put it on at a bar, it's the worst fucking song because you just repeat the same thing a million
Sure.
times, you know?
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
yeah. I
I
yeah.
I have a story. Oh my God, this guy was a jerk, but at the time he was dating one of my friends and oh my God, he was such an ass. He was like, "Oh my God, you guys are taking so long to decide. Well, it's just like look at the catalog. Oh, boop. Okay, cool. Stairway to Heaven. Cool. I'll just do that song." And then like has like it's 7 minutes and like half of it is instrumental and it's in a full karaoke
He's
bar
just
and we're
like
all just like,
standing out there
yeah,
up there
we're
with
all
the
just
solo
like,
going on, like
yeah, we're all just like, dude, like it was funny. In the moment, we were all just like laughing and having a good time, like laughing about it. And now, with hindsight, I'm like, oh, what an
yeah, I feel
asshole.
like a lot of people pick karaoke like by one part that they
Yeah.
want to do in that song. And I've had that happen before where I picked Dream On just because I wanted to go Dream On,
Yeah,
Dream
yeah, yeah,
On.
yeah.
But that only happens like at the end, like way deep into the song, and then I'm like, man, I don't want to sing this whole song. I just
Yeah,
wanted to do
yeah.
that joke, just like Dream On, just like a high one.
Yeah, one of my favorite things when I was younger, like going to a karaoke bar with my friends and like I still love going to karaoke bars, but I like fresher into like being able to like go to bars I remember, like, there would be a nice normal group of people doing like Africa by Toto. And then like me and my friends would like all like start screaming "Welcome to the Black Parade,"
Oh
like,
my
and the like, and
god. Yeah.
just like we're just like we're going to annihilate the vibe in this karaoke bar.
But I do feel like it's a good song though, Welcome to the
It
Black
is.
Parade, because everybody
It's
knows
dramatic.
it.
It
Yeah.
Yeah,
is true.
it's dramatic, but it's got all these like different like moments,
Yes.
and then people, and there's like enough repetition that people can join in if they
Sure.
want to.
Definitely. It honestly, the moment that I'm remembering, it was just a funny situation because the people who were in the bar definitely never had an emo phase.
Mm,
So we were kind of being vibe assassins.
That's so funny.
But it is a great karaoke song, and I will stand by that.
that's how I imagine this little you as a goblin on page 3. This is the vibe assassin.
Yes.
You're ready.
It's
You're crouched
definitely.
and ready to sing some emo song really loud, and a bunch of people are gonna have to watch
Yes.
for like 3-4 minutes.
Exactly.
I'm gonna give a little shout out to all the Instagram people who like ask questions. Ink_KG hi. We had Fantasy Rebirth 96. Basically they asked if you were gonna if you want to direct an animated series and what genre it would be and why. I think that's kind
That's
of
so
interesting.
fun. I've actually thought about how fun it would be to direct voice acting sessions because I've had so many great directors over the years, and it's always a lot of fun to get good direction. I mean, I feel like genre, there's it's kind of, I mean, comedy, but I feel like in the vein of like you're still able to convey emotional stuff, like in the way that Steven Universe does. Also, I was a huge fan of BoJack Horseman when it was coming out.
Oh yeah,
And I feel like just like that sort of blend of like, okay, you're tackling like a lot of really heavy stuff, but also like this can get extremely silly and zany. Like I feel like that would be really fun. But also, I mean, just generally, I feel like directing, at least when I'm thinking of like directing an animated series, I'm thinking of being like voice director. I think that being like at the helm of a cartoon, I wouldn't even know where to begin. But I think it would be a lot of fun to do. I mean, there's so many great animated shows. But I feel like genre is hard because it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm like, okay, out.
But I feel
You know
like
what? Western. I would want to direct an animated Western. How about
Western child actors.
Yes.
It's a show. It's a
Yes.
Western, and there's only one. This is a one-horse town. We only have one voice actor in here that gets all the roles, and the new Desperado comes in, and they're like, "I
Yes.
have a different range than you do." And then,
Oh, yeah, exactly. That's gonna be my magnum opus.
That's so fun. I'm gonna keep kind of going with a couple of shout outs. We kind of went through their questions, but Thomas.Carrick.Wilson, thank you so much for your question. And Captain.Mycilia and Theater Geek and Sager_Bagger, Recastly Fanatic 2007. They asked for what was it like performing Louise on Lou and Lou Safety Patrol. Can you still do her voice?
Oh my god. Oh my god. Well, that was one of the very first cartoon animation voiceover gigs I ever got. And it was for Playhouse Disney. It was like a little interstitial short that would run between the major episodic programming. And it was little shorts about teaching kids to be safe. And it was really cute. So there would be like, it was two twins, Lou and Lou. It's that one was just Lou and one was Louise. And I was Louise. And we'd go around and be like, "You've got a safety violation, partner." Like,
yes.
And I'm guessing that's probably as close as I can get to the voice without actually de-aging myself to 6.
Yeah. Did you have any struggle with a voice changing, either whether in the middle of roles or like as you're going along, like knowing your own voice when you're growing up doing voices?
I mean, I feel like when I was younger, I mean, I don't know if this is just my own like sort of inner whatever. I kind of feel like as a child I was a bit of a one trick pony. Like I definitely had like cute little girl voice, and it definitely took time to like sort of learn what I could do outside of that. And I mean, but I mean that's not also entirely fair, because there was definitely stuff that I had to do that required me to push myself out of my comfort zone, which I was really lucky to, be able to do. But in terms of vocal control, I think the thing that I understood kind of intuitively from an early age was like cadence, which is I think
Mm.
why I booked a lot of Disney stuff when I was really little. Because when I was little, I watched a lot of Playhouse Disney, and it was all those shows that would be like, "Can you find where the yellow ball is?" Like, and like all
Mhm.
of those like stuff. So I
Yeah.
kind of knew how to do that like thing. And
Mhm.
yeah, it was interesting. I think as I got older, because once my voice started not naturally sounding like that, and I realized that I was getting auditions to still sound like that, I had to kind of figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
Mm.
But I don't remember it being particularly hard. I think it was just like, I kind of just have to squeeze my vocal cords. Like,
Like you never
Mhm.
found yourself cast on like a more adult thing, and then you're accidentally like, do you know where the body is?
yeah.
Like,
I would have so much fun with that. That would be so much fun now. But yeah, no.
where's the murder victim? Can you point to him on the screen?
That'd be so much fun. I mean,
That's
I do have a bit of a dark sense of humor though, so
That's so great. Oh my gosh, that would be funny. That would be like a really good BoJack bit, I feel like,
oh yeah,
in a way somewhere.
definitely, definitely.
Yeah, I think we kind of oh yeah, we had our patron Katie who asked any tips for quiet girls who want to voice act.
Yeah. So I definitely think the beauty of voice acting too is that it can be worked on solid like solo. You can do your auditions solo. And I think if you can, I mean obviously I do have roommates, but like, if you're home alone, you can really just let your freak flag fly and get like willing to be silly. And I do think that kind of funnily enough, like my voice acting got worse when I became a teenager and like then got better, because it's like when you have that thing where you're like starting to get really self-aware and self-conscious, it's harder to let yourself get really silly.
Mhm.
And when you give yourself that freedom, it really makes your voice acting better,
Mhm.
especially if you're trying to do animation. I mean, definitely. But also like you can lean into that, like the shyness and the timidness, because there are so many great roles too for like the quiet character. And like, you know, I have auditions where it's like, you need to sound like you're just like really shy and scared, and it's really cute, and like, and you can,
Mhm.
and like if that is like naturally like more like the quality of your voice, yeah, you like that can be your niche.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it's but genuinely I think that gaining more confidence through being really silly alone can make it easier, that even when you do have like, if you book a job and you get in the room, you still have the like muscle memory.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Something really interesting that I stumbled across on this sort of subject is I have a friend who's traditionally very shy, but she does a live stream where she talks through a puppet, and she kind of has this puppet world. But she is normally she is a very shy person, and what she's done is sort of make a character that part of the humor is that they're shy and they stumble through their words, and then they get embarrassed about it, and then they let themselves feel those real things, but they let the character be that thing. And I know that's not going to work for every character, but I did find that really interesting that she's successfully pulled off, like, this is like a shy character who's funny about it.
That's
And yeah.
great. Yeah, I mean, I think just any way, yeah, I mean, that's the cool thing about art. You can use art to work through things, and I mean, even just like it's fun to be able to just treat art as like a cathartic space where you can explore feelings that don't have an outlet in your day-to-day life. Like if you are someone that's shy, having the freedom to play a really outgoing character can feel really cool, even if you know that that's not who you are in your day-to-day life.
You know what I've heard is good practice? Playing when people play D&D with their friends
Oh, yeah.
and trying to stay in character and do a little voice, and it's low stakes and you get to
Yeah.
practice. Yeah.
That's actually, that's great. I've played a little bit of D&D before, and that's definitely super fun.
I could imagine you having so much fun playing D&D. I feel like, yeah.
I had a character that was a Tempest cleric that was like a really old woman, and my friend who was DMing, I was like, I know that Greece does not exist in your universe, but I need her to be worshiping Poseidon, so that way she put her as a nun, so I can name her Mother Mia, like Mama Mia. Like, oh my god, it's so cheesy and
That's
bad,
so
but
silly.
it's so silly. It was
That's
so
hilarious,
silly.
though.
But the way it got worked into the campaign was really funny. It was like she was in this like weird fringe cult that worshipped a god named Poseidon.
That's so funny.
That's hilarious.
That's really funny.
Her name was Mother Mia Tsatsiki.
Tsatsiki!
Mamma Mia.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I
love a good joke name. I'm not gonna lie.
This is the moment where I struggle because I've been paying attention to the conversation up until this
Okay,
last
so
minute.
here's just context.
Right.
V traditionally has struggled with transitioning into ending the show with segues. So
that's fair.
So right now, what's going through V's mind is, how do I construct a way to transition either from Mamma Mia or D&D into ending the show? And I want sometimes I just do it for V, but I want to, like a baby deer with wobbly legs. I want to see her stand.
Sometimes I get like a really like something like on a silver platter, and it's like, wow, so easy, and I can just stick it in the show. But here I'm like, all right, Greece.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. Hold on. Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna workshop it. This is good. We're brainstorming. This is how real writers' rooms work. Let's go.
It's true. We're gonna just throw out ideas, and we're gonna see what sticks.
Elbow Greece with a lot of work. You can
Mamma Mia, what a good conversation this was.
There we go. That's super solid.
Yeah, solid. And with that, that's the end of this creative block. Grace, thanks for being our guest and sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
And thanks to our listeners. Follow us on Twitter at Creative Block, where we ask for drawing prompts and questions to ask our guests. Huge thanks to our editor, Clements, for editing the podcast, and Marco for helping us to produce the show.
If you love our show, then support us on Patreon. Becoming a patron gets you early access to interviews as well as bonus episodes. But if you do not want to spend money on us, that is totally okay, because you can click and subscribe and share and talk to your friends about us. If you love this podcast, leave a comment. It goes a long way. Click the link in the description of this episode. I have been your host, V.
And I was Sean. Click that link, Glaze. Keep being creative, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.